The thing about Chelsea is life is never boring.
Hey chaps, welcome back to ProperChels.tv, your one-stop Chelsea news channel. I'm your host, as always, Logan Blue. Now, time to fess up. I was planning on taking 7 to 10 days away from the channel because it's the international break, which is a huge old snorefest where nothing happens in relation to Chelsea. But who was I kidding? Chelsea are a clown show at present and can't go more than 2 news cycles without having the name of the club dragged through the mud in the national press. So here we are again, on the back pages for all the wrong reasons and on some of the front pages as well. So let's dive down into it. The elephant in the room, the civil war at Chelsea. Firstly, let's have a look at some context. So the context to this discussion is that Chelsea fans, certainly modern Chelsea fans, are blessed by having had Roman Abramovich as our owner. Now, Roman was the greatest owner in the history of football. He didn't care about money. He just cared about winning, and he loved the club with a passion. I can't speak to his political affiliations or what happened in his or didn't happen in his personal life. That's above my pay grade. I'm just a football fan. He was a football club owner, and he was the owner of the club I love and have been following my entire life. And as a football owner, he was brilliant. A little trigger happy, sure. Shouldn't have let Jose 1.0 go. Shouldn't have let Carlo go after the double winning season. But every time he made a decision, he did it for the best reasons because he wanted to win. And guess what? We always ended up winning. Now, when Chelsea were seized, Chelsea was, as a singular noun, when Chelsea was seized as an asset by the British government, it became a distressed asset, which meant that the sharks were circling because there was blood in the water, and every investment consortium or firm or potential owner thought they could get Chelsea on the cheap. Little did they know. Chelsea went for £2.5 billion eventually, which was at the time the most expensive single purchase of a sports franchise. Right, and that was, and on top of the 2.5, there was another 2 billion that had to be guaranteed by whoever bought the club to invest in a new stadium, to invest in the women's team, and in the development of the men's team. Okay, so Roman left us in very, very good shape. He also swallowed over $1.5 billion in money owed to him by Chelsea Football Club. He just wrote it off, right? That's the kind of guy who loved Chelsea. Now, we were never likely to find another Roman. Maybe another Roman doesn't exist. Maybe football has moved on and another Roman like that can't exist, right? Most of the clubs in England are owned by American companies or are owned by consortiums or are owned by wealthy Middle Eastern oil states, shall we say, which I think we all can agree shouldn't be the case in relation to the a sovereign state owning a club. I just think that's well out of order, But no, that's a discussion for another video. So we were never likely to get another Roman. So in comes Team Todd, who has teamed up with Clear Lake Capital. Now, Clear Lake Capital have 61% of the shares of the votes. Okay, as far as Chelsea is concerned, and Todd has 13.5, with the other couple of investors making up the remainder. So basically, if you imagine a boardroom with 10 seats, 6 of the seats are on Clear Lake Capital's side, and 4 of the seats are on Todd's side. Now, there are different types of shares. I won't bore you with how this breaks down, but basically, the way the deal was structured, Todd has B-class shares and Clear Lake have A-class shares. Okay, that boring financial mumbo jumbo is not worth getting into, but the gist of it is not all shares are created equal. However, Todd, being a billionaire and a wildly successful businessman in his own right, has obviously structured the deal so that he can't be forced out unless he wants to be forced out. And also, he's got a veto. So basically, everyone has to agree, right? It was a bit like the United Nations, where you can vote for something, against something, or you can abstain. In this case, take no action is an action. So, for example, Todd apparently wanted to keep the last manager, right? But Clear Lake didn't. And so even though that Poch was taken to dinner by Todd, had a private one-on-one dinner a couple of nights before he ended up getting fired, right? It didn't matter a hill of beans because Clear Lake ultimately said, no, we're going to fire him. Now, Boehly could have vetoed that, right? But he didn't, because he's a wise enough man to know you got to pick your battles. And if you're not the biggest kid in the schoolyard, you've also got to know your place, right? And he's not going to go to war with Clear Lake unless there's absolutely no other way, forward for him. Unfortunately, I suspect that the Poch decision was the straw that broke the camel's back, and relations between Clear Lake and Todd's camp has just deteriorated by all accounts since then, and now the differences seem to be irreconcilable. Okay, so in the media, certainly in the YouTube world, where Chelsea fans talk on channels such as this, not everybody, 75% of fans are jumping up and saying, "Oh, I'm Team Todd," which is fine, right? That's great. I guess you've got to pick a side, I suppose. But I suspect people have very short memories, because when Todd was in charge of Chelsea, right, when he was the face of Chelsea, in that first season, that first transfer window, and he was the temporary guy in charge of buying players, it was a disaster. And that season, under Todd, right, we've got to remember this, we finished 12th, right? So far out of the Champions League, it wasn't even funny. We weren't even in Europe, right? So when that happened, Clear Lake basically said, oh, no, we're not having this. We were planning to just sit back and trust you with, fixing Chelsea, getting them back to the top, because, hey, look, you've done it with the Dodgers, right? You've got form, right? We're a hedge fund. You've got form. You're a part owner in several sports franchises. We trust you. One season, 12th, not good enough. So he was marginalized at that point. And I suspect it's like shifting sand beneath your feet. You don't realize you've lost your footing until it's too late. But Clear Lake obviously lost faith in Todd's vision, and so decided to throw their weight around, which they can do, as they've got 61.5% of the shares. So they threw their weight around. They started to have a more hands-on approach, right? Todd could have fought back, said, hang on, that's not what we agreed. But he's like, no, it's okay, I'll step back. Because from what we've been led to believe, Todd doesn't want to be involved in the day-to-day running of the club. He believes, and I think most Chelsea fans believe, that a football club should have really good football people running the football club, right? With the owners being in the background. They can come in if and when there's a huge decision to be made, right? Like maybe going above and beyond for a certain player, above the budget you've agreed to, but hey, discretion of the owners, it's my money, so yes, let's go all in for him, because he's going to be a difference maker for the club, right? But that's a great view of how to run a club. Since taking over from Todd, okay, and this is where you have to put apples against apples, basically, is what I'm trying to say. You have to compare, equally, because under Todd, we got 12th and we had a horrible transfer window. Under Clearlake, we got 6th and we were definitely on an upward trajectory at the end of the season with Poch. Ironically, it was Todd that wanted to keep Poch and Clearlake that didn't think Poch was, on board with their vision. Lo and behold, on your bike, son, keep on jogging. We've got Enzo Maresca as the manager, right? Spend lots more money, but both sides of this equation like to spend money, which is great. But Clearlake seemed to be on this huge player trading high. It's like they just want to stockpile all these players, and in a way, who can argue with them? Because if you look at it in a purely cold light of day, buying all these guys from South America or wherever for crazy prices in the sense of they haven't proved anything yet because they're like 16, 17, 18, right? They can be good for their age and then just not really become the player you expect them to be. I mean, look at Carlton Cole. If you're old enough to remember him for Chelsea, he was crushing the records, the scoring records, all the way through the various age groups in the Chelsea youth academy. And I foolishly, back in the day, thought he's going to be the new Osgood. Yeah, that's something that didn't exactly age well. But anyway, he just didn't have the talent to back up his ego, as it turned out. And there's a lot of players like that. But I think ultimately, if they buy all these players, let's just spend 15 million on a player in South America that we've never heard of over here, but lo and behold, he's potentially one of the next big things to come out of Brazil or Argentina or Colombia or wherever. Are we really going to lose money on him? He's on a long contract, so he's nailed down. If he becomes a world beater, a generational talent, he's ours, right? But if he doesn't, we're going to be able to sell him for like 25 million or 30 million. No, at some stage, we're going to be able to sell him at a profit. It might not be a huge profit, but it'll be a profit. So the logic of the Clearlake sort of strategy really does have merit in the longer term. In as much as we buy these players, they mature, we then cherry pick the best of the best, and we on-sell the ones that don't. Meanwhile, we've gone back and bought a whole bunch more younger players on the conveyor belt. And again, we'll let them age, we'll let them mature, we'll put them out in sister clubs if we've got more than one at that stage, but we'll loan them out, we'll develop them, and then lo and behold, we'll say, okay, well, we've got 25 players here. Those 3, you're coming into the first team squad because we think you're a generational talent. The rest will on-sell. And they'll make 5 million, 10 million, 20 million. They'll make profit on the players. So it's a really good strategy. And I think it's money well spent in the long term. Where I think Todd and his side of the battle come into it is that they agree with that. That's great, brilliant, excellent long-term strategy. But Chelsea cannot go another season out of the Champions League. We cannot wait until 2030, right, until we are winning the title again or we're challenging for honours again. We just can't. So Todd is of the opinion, and he's done this with the Dodgers by signing some of the biggest baseball players in the country on humongous contracts, right? Like if Mbappe was available and wanted to come to Chelsea, and he was going to cost an absolute fortune, Todd would be all in because he knows he'd make a shed load of money back selling shirts, and he would be worth his weight in gold on the pitch, right? Now, Clearlake don't believe that. They believe they've got a wage structure and they don't want to rock the apple cart by bringing somebody in like an Osman and paying him twice what you're paying the best player in Chelsea at the moment, which is Carlton Palmer, right? Why would you upset the apple cart? And you can't argue with that logic, right? But you also have to understand that sometimes you just got to pay what they're worth. So if we sold, God forbid, but if we sold Palmer, right? If we sold Palmer, what would we sell him for? 100 million? I think he's a £100 million player right now, and he's only been with us 12 months. He's just going to get better, right? But let's just say 90 million, 85, 90 million at the bare minimum, right? But probably he's going to be a £100 million player. So we could flip him and get that money. But, if we bought him from somebody else, we're paying 100 million for him, right? And I guarantee you he's not coming in on a £60,000 salary. I believe his salary has now had a bump to 120 because of his brilliant performances and goals last season, right? I think the goal bonus is extra anyway on top of his normal salary. But either way, if we were to buy him, he's not coming to us if we're paying 120,000 when Arsenal will pay him 250,000 and Man United will pay him 300,000, right? He's just not coming to us. Hence, having to buy them young, put them on long contracts at lower wages, and incentivizing them. I think both sides of this battle are all in on that. But like I said, where Todd differs is that he understands the best way to grow the asset's value is to win. If you win big in the sense of the team, but you also win big in the sense of the commercial side of the business. The sponsorship gets better, right? God, we haven't even got, what are we, 3 matches in? We haven't even got a shirt sponsor. And correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't the Americans, sorry to generalize, but aren't the Americans meant to be, the dog's bollocks when it comes to sponsorship, the commercial stuff? Aren't they meant to be able to show the English, how to really, really get the, value out of the asset? Well, I'm sorry. We've had 2 seasons where we started the season without a shirt sponsor, which is the biggest sponsorship that we're selling because we're not selling naming rights to the stadium or anything, right? So they failed miserably, both of them. Last time it was Team Todd. This time it's Clear Lake Capital. It's insane that we haven't got a front of shirt sponsor. If nothing else, just so we can hide the monstrosity of the shirt with some big logo, so we don't have to look at the vomit stain of a shirt that they've given us. Thank you for nothing, Nike. Can we please just go back to Adidas? Anyway, but look, the long and the short of it is the battle lines have been formed, and Team Todd now says he's got backing to buy out Clear Lake. Clear Lake say they don't want to sell. Clear Lake say, we've already got the money, we want to buy you out. Team Todd says, I don't want to get bought out, right? Now, it could be that we are just seeing posturing. In other words, it could be that we're seeing that Team Todd is posturing like he's got all this money behind him because he can't afford to buy it all himself. He just can't. He just wants a silent partner who'll be, as advertised, will be silent, right? And he, somebody from Saudi, he's got some great contacts in Saudi Arabia, but someone from that neck of the woods would probably be where he's getting the money from. And remembering he's got to pay enough to get Clear Lake out, which means that they're going to want a huge profit. And if you pay them $3 billion and it's $2.5 billion, they've made $500 million, but honestly, I suspect they make that from a regular deal without, breaking a sweat. So I suspect it'll have to be a big chunk of change to convince Clear Lake to sell, right? And I don't think that Team Todd is going to be able to do that, to find that money, okay? Even though 75% of Chelsea fans seem to be siding with Team Todd, even though he was just awful, in charge of Chelsea in that first season, right? Throwing his weight around, talking about wanting to play a 4-4-3 formation, talking about having a North versus South, all-star game, and just, I want 3 points tonight, and he's playing a cup game. Just showing his ignorance, right? There's a great old saying, you have one mouth and 2 ears, use them in proportion. And another great saying is, it's better to be silent and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and be proved one. Right? With some Todd, he didn't, I suspect he's learnt the hard way. He doesn't know when to just shut up and admit that he doesn't know what he doesn't know. So, okay, that's the gist of it. The battle lines are formed. Each side wants to buy the other side out. I don't suspect that there's going to be any middle ground. I don't think they're going to kiss and make up. So I suspect between now and the end of Christmas, between now and the end of the year, we will have one of them bought out. And while 75% of Chelsea fans would like that to be Todd winning that one, if I was a betting man, and I'm not, my money would be going on Clearlake because they have 61.5% of all shares, and they're not going anywhere unless you really, really, really make it worth their while. Anyway, stay tuned for this one because this story is just going to have legs. That much we can be damn sure.
Okay then, that's all the news that's fit to print, and quite a bit that isn't. As always, thank you again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and God bless, look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.